I spent 15 hours and 55 minutes studying 14 different podcast episodes that the Heaton brothers went on so I could understand exactly how they were able to make over $120 million last year with their clothing brand Represent, and how you can use the exact same strategies they've used over the last 13 years to be able to build your own clothing brand to multiple 8 and even 9 figures in a fraction of the time. So first things first, kind of how they got started. So George started representing his dad's shed with 25 screen printed shirts. And their first individual product was their black jeans that George would go to his grandma to get tailored, and they kind of built it from there. Paid marketing or advertising just sold really well organically, and that allowed them to have, the capital to be able to afford to do more cool stuff, make more garments, do runway shows. They went to different countries. They were in department stores and actually market their products. And then they started to build up. They got tons of celebrities wearing their clothes, started elevating, kind of pushing that line between the premium, like Louis Vuitton, the luxury boutiques, but also being in the streetwear market and kind of playing the middle ground and being, a streetwear brand with the high end premium feel. They did runway shows in New York and Milan, all this stuff. Around 2018, they started having IP issues with the name Represent in Europe. They were also doing runway shows around this time, and doing all that stuff caused them to be very unprofitable with the brand, and they just didn't like the way it was going. So what they did was they rebuilt from the ground up, and that's how we have the Represent that we know and love today. And they kind of pivoted back to focusing on building a community brand, because to them it was never about numbers, it was about growing as people. And so they focused on telling a story, creating a culture through their products, and making good products that no one wanted to return because they were so meticulous about, all of the steps of, creating said products. And, in the end, their goal isn't to exit. They want to dominate the game and become a world name. And that's what they've been doing over the past, since they started in 2011. And so kind of the way you reverse engineer this is by focusing on product positioning with it, which is for them, the luxury streetwear with premium, premium feel. Their marketing strategy was purely organic, just making a good product that was customer focused. And then, occasionally having some influencers who kind of rock their stuff, and then just focusing on limited drops through their vault, lots of email flows for email retention, and just all in all building, a community first brand that, allow them to have a cult-like following. And that's kind of how they brand themselves. So I'll actually, break it down in visual format so you kind of get it. I promise this will loop back into the end with Represent. Just bear with me. So first things first, though, the foundation for any content, ads or organic, is messaging. And so your messaging has to be dialed no matter what. If you want an algorithm to favor your content like the way it favors theirs, you have to have good messaging. If you want your ads to actually get spend and get, good metrics, you have to once again have good messaging. And so the contingent is people are sick of clothes being shoved in their face all over their feeds by people they don't know, like, or trust, right? And so in other niches, this can work if your product is solving a problem within their life. But with clothes, there's no problem being solved. It's a non-commodity. People don't need it. And if they do, they're going to Goodwill or they're going to Walmart to buy the cheapest clothes they can get. So what you have to do is construct a good ad. And then on top of that, spend a bunch of money on these, on these ads to actually even drive in people through cold traffic. And these are people who don't even want to be sold to because everyone's trying to sell them. They're sick of the ads. They don't want it, right? And so they don't care. How do we make them care? And so the way you do this is, I'll explain it. Like I said, it'll loop back in a second. So the first thing you have to understand is market awareness levels, which is pretty simply how educated your customer is on their product that you sell and how likely they are to purchase from you. So unaware, never heard of you. Problem aware, they are aware of the problem that it solves. Solution aware, they're aware of solutions to that said problem. Product aware, they're aware of similar products to yours. And then aware, they are aware of your brand specifically, and they are ready to buy, right? They can be primed to become customers. And so this is kind of like the more visual format of that, right? Like I said, unaware is the biggest, then problem aware, solution aware, product, and then aware. And then kind of what you do, or what most brands do, is use paid ads to kind of let Facebook optimize and drive these people, lower and lower down the funnel until they become buyers, or at least until they become in the aware market. So that way SMS and emails can, retarget them into actual buyers. And so that's for commodity brands though. If your problem solves a product, if you don't solve a problem, your product is a non-commodity. And so there is no problem or solution. It's just the identity behind the brand, which is how you sell these people. And so you have your unaware audience, your identity aware, and then you're aware. And so what you have to understand is that most people are unaware audience. Logically, we want to convert these people into buyers. However, they have to actually be down in the aware audience to actually make the buying decision. right? And so what most brands do is they use paid ads and they let Facebook optimize for these conversions. But the issue with Facebook is this is your brand as a piggy bank, and this is you building up, your customers, your community over the years. And all Facebook is doing is cutting a hole in the bottom of your piggy bank and calling it sales generated. This is not at all the way you want to go about this, because what you're doing is you're just milking your audience. And the issue isn't even milking them. The issue is you have no way of regenerating the aware audience that your ads are milking, right? And so the way you grow your aware audience is by educating the unaware audiences about the problem that your product solves and letting them sell themselves on why they need it, right? If you try to sell them when they don't know, like, or trust you, just like everyone else is doing, they're not going to go for it because they're sick of everyone else trying to sell them something. So you have to be different with your approach, which is what we figured out how to do. So what you want to establish first off is that you have to educate your unaware audience on the problem your product solves. But like we said, clothes don't solve a problem. So it's a different mechanism you have to use to convert these people into buyers, and that is organic content. And this is where the magic happens. So what you want to do is you want to showcase story, style, culture, lifestyle, movement, symbolism, etc., and allow this to be the conversion mechanism from that unaware audience into identity aware and then into the aware audience to prime them to become customers. And so a good example I'm using here, 24/7 Represent. I found them from an Iman Gadji video maybe a year and a half ago. And he was running 3 marathons in, I think, 3 different continents. And so at some point in the video, I saw everyone wearing this, 24/7. I was like, what does this mean? Like, everyone has this on. I get the idea, obviously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like always, foot always on the pedal. And so I was very intrigued by this movement. I went into my browser, searched up 24/7 Represent, and I found the brand very simply, right? Just from that Google search. And this made me, all I had to do was have a good product that's already spoke to me as a consumer. And I was bought into the movement already. Went to their website. On a mission is their entire like motto. Their entire branding is around being on a mission, right? Once again, priming me as a consumer. I'm once again even more bought in. And so, like, if you go look at their YouTube, all of their stuff is, being on a mission, taking over Chicago for High Rocks. George is running an ultra marathon from LA to Las Vegas. Fastest human to run across Australia. All their stuff is people getting at it, people getting to it, and being the best at whatever they do, right? And so the kind of the lesson at the end of this is that if your movement, your whatever aligns with this unaware audience, they will want to become a part of your movement on their own accord. And so naturally, when they assume the identity of someone who's a part of your movement, the calling card for that is literally for them to go on your website and buy your product so they can physically embody your movement. And so for me, I went and bought the 24/7 Represent shirt and then the Shaker Cup. And then I went to LA a couple months ago and I also bought one of their Owners Club hats, right? But that doesn't matter. The point is, you get the idea that you have to sell someone on the movement first and they will buy it on their own accord. You don't have to do any marketing, right? And so kind of to explain my customer journey, they sold me on the movement. I went to their website at first. They didn't have it in stock. In the meantime, went and followed all their socials, started engaging with their content. Now I'm bought into their funnel. Now they can actually hit me with ads and target me, right? And so when they restocked, they ran a carousel ad. One of the items I wanted, which was the shirt, happened to be in that carousel. I went to the site. It was one of their vault drops or one of their vault restocks. I went and bought it. Super simple, just like that. I also bought a Shaker Cup because it was like $10. And then on their ads manager, they're seeing 40 cents for a website click and a purchase for me. But the issue is Facebook ads can't track the entire customer journey from unaware to identity aware to aware to a buyer. But just because they can't track it doesn't mean they don't know it's happening, right? In fact, they know what's happening and they're building around it and optimizing for it, right? I'm sure if you could open up their ads manager and see their ROAS, it's probably insane and they know it's working because of this. But at the same time, they're not worried about ad metrics. They're worried about building a brand with actual culture. So the metrics don't even matter to them, because when you focus on the product and you focus on the experience around that product, the customer will literally sell themselves on why they need to buy it. You don't have to do any work on that. And so that's what it looks like. Over here, you have organic doing all the heavy lifting within your funnel, right? And then maybe a tiny bit of ads, tiny bit of SMS, tiny bit of email to kind of keep people, maybe they forget whatever, keep reconverting them, maybe you hit them with a 10% or 20% off, right? But the cool thing about organic is, like we established up here, organic costs no money. It's free. To produce it, maybe, sure, but you have to produce your ad creatives anyway. So why wouldn't you leverage the algorithm with, actually properly curated organic content to be able to push it out for free, and so we can find your ideal customer for free without having to spend tens of thousands of dollars every single month. So Facebook can maybe find these people and, you don't even really know what's going on. And so to kind of bring it back, right? If you don't have it set up this way, it looks like the graph we showed from earlier, which is where your paid ads have to do all the work and like maybe a little bit of SMS, maybe a little bit of emails, but you're spending tens and tens of thousands of dollars to convert these people. And once again, Facebook's job is to convert people into buyers. You are setting up campaigns, conversion campaigns. They are trying to convert people into buyers. What ends up happening is this is also why ads die, because if you don't have a steady flow of new eyes coming into your aware audience, after a couple months, the ads will have converted everyone who's in that aware. There's no such thing as ads dying, only the audience dies. So if you don't have a system to convert unaware people into identity aware and into aware so they can become, primed customers, then your ads are going to stop working because Facebook has exhausted the reserves of the people who are aware of your brand and who are ready and primed to buy, right? And so the inverse is true. If you're converting the unaware audience into aware audience quicker than your ads is turning them into buyers, then your return on ad spend will skyrocket. Your cost per purchase will fall like a rock. And this is how people get crazy metrics from their ads manager, right? Now, the nuance to this is you have to do this without the aware audience knowing they're being sold to, because if they know they're being sold to, they don't really want to be sold to. So you have to sell them without them knowing, that you're selling them, to begin with. And the only way you can do this is through organic content. And that's, to kind of loop it back around. That's exactly what Represent has done to be able to, I watched, some of their podcasts and stuff. And last year they made $120 million USD, right? How does a brand do this? By leveraging exactly what I said. They don't use a lot of paid ads. They've built their brand mainly through organic, right? And so this is what we do. We help clothing brands implement systems like this to be able to scale to multi-6 and even 7-figure months without having to spend multi-6 and even 7 figures every month on paid ads. So if you're ready to put a system like this into your brand, I'll leave a link in the description. You can fill out the form, book a call. Not going to BS and waste your time. I'll give you the breakdown of the entire system, then we can talk numbers. If it makes sense to build something like this for you, we'll do it. If not, we have a couple other solutions that we can discuss. That's all I've got. Thank you for your time.